All right, everything is in its place, the links have been updated, and the spelling has been checked. Are you ready to hand off your document to a printer? Almost. We first have to pre-flight the document. Just like pilots do before they take off, we run a series of checks first to identify potential problems with the file. Several years ago, there were standalone programs that desktop publishers used to check their documents, but InDesign has that built right in. In fact, InDesign is constantly checking your files behind the scenes. You may have noticed this little red light here at the bottom of the window. Sometimes it's green, but when it's red, that indicates that there are problems or errors with the document. You can double-click it to bring up the Preflight panel, which in this case lets me know that I have one text error in the file, and I'll click these flippy triangles to see what they are. And it tells me that I have one text error, it's overset text, and it's on page 8. If I highlight the error, I can see that I have 15 characters of overset text, and I even get some suggestions on how to fix it. Resize the text frame or edit the text to fit. Thank you, InDesign, for those helpful hints. I can click on the page number and be taken right to the offending text frame, and now I think I'll just nudge this picture frame up a bit, which should give me some more room for the text. And that worked, so now you can see the green light and I have no errors. You can customize what sorts of things InDesign looks for by going to the flyout menu and choosing Define Profiles. There are two default profiles, Basic and Digital Publishing, and here is a list of the kinds of things that will get checked. Under General is a summary of this profile, and here are other categories. I can create my own profile in one of two ways. If I try to modify the basic profile, I get a message asking me to create my own based on this profile, which is what I'll do. You can name it anything, and then it'll show up in the list. Alternately, you can click the plus sign and create a new profile that's based on the one currently selected. So let's say I want InDesign to flag RGB colors in my file. I always print in CMYK, so I want to make sure I don't have any RGB objects. I can do that, and I can specify a minimum acceptable resolution for my images as well, and maybe I'll have it alert me when I have overrides in my paragraph styles. I'll click Save and then click OK, and now I can select my profile in this little drop-down menu. InDesign goes through the document again, and holy cow, I have 50 errors. I'll take a look at this image on page 3, and yes, I remember now that that photo is really old and crappy, and I'll have to make it smaller to make up for its low resolution. This is the kind of thing that doesn't show up in the Links panel. Well, you can see the resolution info in the Links panel, but it won't alert you to problems with a red light like the Preflight does, which is why you should always keep it on. So I fixed all those errors and I'm ready to send everything off to the printer. As you recall from the lesson on the Links panel, InDesign doesn't embed the images in the document, it links to them on disk. So you might have some photos in one folder and others in another and some on an external drive somewhere, and it would be a hassle to round them all up in order to hand them off to someone, so you can have InDesign package the entire project. Just go to File, Package, and here's the thing about packaging. It's sort of another line of defense before sending your documents off. In fact, half of the time if I have a green light on my workspace telling me there are no errors, I'll just skip the Preflight panel and go directly to packaging. Preflighting can be more thorough, but depending on the profile you use in the Preflight panel, it might not catch every problem. Here I have an alert icon telling me a font is missing. So I'll click on the Fonts tab, and I see a list of all the fonts I've used in the file, and that the missing font is Chunk 5 Condensed. If you have more than one problem font, you can choose to show only the problems. So I'll click Find Font, and I happen to know that there is no condensed version of Chunk 5, so I must have clicked it inadvertently. So I'll click on it to highlight it, change it to Chunk 5 Roman, click Change All, and now I have no more font problems. As with fonts, you can see a list of all the linked files in your document. And by the way, packaging only collects the graphics that are on the pages of your document, not anything you might have left on the pasteboard. You can also see whether you have CMYK inks or spot color or both, check the print settings, and so on. When you're ready, click Package, and InDesign will remind you to save it if you haven't. The first thing that pops up is the printing instructions. Here's where you could add some contact info and instructions for whomever is outputting your file. I wish there was a button here or something to fill this in automatically because I usually can't be bothered to do it. And to tell the truth, I'm not sure many printers actually read these instructions anyway. Click Continue and InDesign creates a folder named with your document's name, then the word folder, and puts copies of the document itself in the folder, as well as all the linked graphics. You can also have it collect the fonts you used and to update the links. Update links just means that InDesign will relink all the graphics in this new copy of the document. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want to check that. You can click to see those instructions one more time in case you left something out, and then click Package. This message warns you about using your font licenses in the proper, i.e. legal way. You're usually not allowed to give fonts to someone else, the licenses don't transfer, but it's generally okay to send them to a commercial printer to use when outputting your job. Okay, here we are at last, and it will take a few seconds for InDesign to collect everything. And here's the folder on my desktop, and inside it is the copy of my document, a subfolder containing the fonts used, and notice that it only copies the styles that I actually used, not the entire font families. Packaging the fonts has another advantage, and that is when you give this folder to a printer or other service provider, they don't actually have to install the fonts on their system, which is very cool. I used to do pre-press for a commercial printer, and we were always having to install fonts for customers and then uninstall them before we installed other customers' fonts, because one client's version of Helvetica was not exactly the same as the other clients, and there would be conflicts, which would cause problems, and it was just a hassle. So this is a great advantage if you ask me. Here is the instructions file, which I did not fill out, and here are copies of all my graphics. Keep in mind that these are copies, so your original files are still safe in their respective locations. Even if you're not sending this folder out to be printed, packaging can be used to collect everything in one folder for archiving. So I could just archive or compress this folder, and/or copy it to my backup disk. Okay, we have one more video, and in that we'll look at the print dialog box and how to export your file to PDF.